and I've never done a workshop yet. So it's going to be really interesting. I just wanted to show everybody how to do some basic book repair. There was some interest, and it didn't seem like anybody else was going to put one on, so I put my name on. So I'm not an expert by any means. I did book repair at my previous job, which was at MacEwan University in Edmonton. And we repaired all sorts of stuff, from CD cases to DVD cases to books to boxes, kits, anything really that we had. We repaired. I even got to spearhead the project to purchase a disc repair machine because we had a large CD collection that was constantly getting trashed. So I repaired a lot of stuff, and it was really fun, and I enjoyed it, and I've had interest from other people since. So I figured I would try and teach people a little bit. And so here we go. Okay, so I figured that I would go through some tips to just basically stuff to think about before starting a repair. And everybody got this fancy little sheet, and yours has a supply list on the back. So the first thing to think about when you want to repair books is why do you have the books? What is the purpose of the collection? Is it a circulating collection? In which case the goal of repairing the books is to keep them in circulation for as long as possible. If it is a if the collection's main purpose is to retain the books, then you're only going to want to repair to keep it from experiencing further damage. For example, in the archives, if there's a page loose or whatnot, you just kind of tuck it back in and put it in a box so that it doesn't get any worse, because it's the value of the item as it is more important than the value as a circulating item. So you want to keep that in mind when you are coming across books to repair them, and for your own personal collection, it really comes down to can you, because the repair will not be perfect. It's very difficult to get a page all the way back in there where it was supposed to be after it has fallen out. So it's basically a trade-off. If the book has sentimental value and you're okay with fixing it to keep it, for example, if it's a children's book and you want to read it to your grandkids because you read it to your kids, then you'd fix it as much as you can, but it's going to be a trade-off between, are you willing to fix it and deal with a little bit of visual damage, or are you just going to buy a new copy? Once you've decided that you are going to repair it, if you're in a library, you probably want to keep track of the book's repairs, because some books go out over and over and over again, such as nursing textbooks, and they fall apart quite quickly. And so once they hit a certain number of repairs, at MacEwan it was 3, you would send the book to the selection librarian to see if they wanted to purchase another copy, because it's clearly a high use item. When you're thinking about repairing and you're not quite sure how to go about repairing a certain item, proceed cautiously, because you can do more harm than good. It can be quite difficult to complete some repairs, and you won't hurt the item anymore by leaving it the way it is for a little bit until you can find some advice, someone with more experience, a YouTube video, because there's quite a few out there. And then, yeah. I'm sorry, can you tell that I'm terribly nervous? Once a book has reached the end of its life, consider keeping it as a weight, if it's a larger book, or as a guinea pig. if it's any size book really, because a guinea pig book that you don't really care about, such as this one that I picked up at Valley Village over the weekend for the purposes of destroying for this workshop, you can destroy it because it's a guinea pig. It's been discarded, or you weeded it from your personal collection or whatnot, and it's really great to take it apart, and you can create damage and then try and repair it before you go on to repair a book that has a little bit more value. When you are weighting books, try and make sure that the weight is bigger than the book, because the weight needs to be distributed evenly. If you find that your weight, such as mine right there, it is a brick that was broken in half and I wrapped it in paper. If you find that your weight is bigger than the book, what you can do is grab a chunk of wood. Chunk of wood, and that will help distribute the weight a lot more evenly than if you just tossed a tiny little weight on a giant book. So it's always handy to have a piece of wood hanging around. Really anything will do. This was the leftovers of a failed high school project, and it's come in quite handy actually. Ordering supplies can be tricky if you're not keeping track of what you've ordered in the past and what you've got currently in your supply cabinet. One of the best ways that I've found is to keep track of the item's catalog number from the supplier when you bring it in and open it. One of the things that I've done is I order from Brodart, and everything comes in these fancy little bags with the item's catalog number written on it. So when I take the bag off, I take a Sharpie and I write it on the inside of the roll. And then as soon as it starts getting low, all I have to do is pick up and look at the inside of the roll, and I can order the exact same thing. You can write it on jars of glue, anything that you think will be used up and will need to be reordered. It's a really simple way of just keeping track of what you've used and what's worked well for you in the past. Another thing that you can do is write it on the repair list or on the supplies list. And then you'll know that, you know, for single stitch tape or 4-way hinge tape, depending on who you're asking, because everything has at least 3 names in the library, you'll know that that's the kind that's worked best for you in the past, because Brodart has about 8 different names for each kind of tape, and they sell them all under different catalog numbers. But they're good folks at Brodart. Brodart also has put out a handy little guide to book care and repair that you can order off of their website for free. If you order a catalog, they send you the catalog, and it's like window shopping for me. I love flipping through the Brodart catalog, and it's a really handy little book. It focuses a little bit more on protection of books, which isn't, I find, really feasible in most libraries, because we just order it and then hope that it lives long enough, and then we worry about fixing it when it breaks instead of protecting it really when we first get it. And one of the things that I like about this is it has a really good guide of anatomy of a book, and it goes through and it will tell you that the super is the little fabric that holds the signatures to the end boards. And that can be quite handy when you are repairing and talking to other people about repairs. And the best lighting that you can get for repairing books is natural lighting, because you're going to see things how they are. You're going to see little discolorations that you wouldn't see under normal fluorescent lighting, and you'll get a better idea of the real extent of the damage. It's also good because if you can see, then you can tell what kind of shape your glue is in for books that have fallen apart, such as this one, which has pretty much completely fallen apart. The supply supplies list. Everything on the supplies list is fairly straightforward. You need scissors, a ruler, a sharp knife, a cutting mat. Your weights, again, you can use bricks or anything particularly heavy if you've got a car rotor or something. Anything that can be cleaned up or wrapped. Old books, again, they work fabulous. You'll need elastics, binder clips, which are also sometimes known as butterfly clips. That's these folks right here. They're good for holding, I've used them to hold wax paper into books so that the wax paper isn't shifting while I'm repairing it. And they can hold paperbacks together. They're not so much on the hardcovers because most of them you can't get big enough to fit around a hardcover. Paint brushes for wax paper. Wax paper you use when you are gluing because the glue doesn't stick to the wax paper so long as you don't actually put the glue on the wax paper. You can glue wax paper to a page. You got to work really hard at it though, but it can be done. Putting it too far down into the gutter when you're gluing is pretty much a surefire way to glue it in there. So you want to pull the wax paper out enough so that you've still got room to glue. Paint brushes, something that not many think of is when you are erasing or sanding there will be dust left over and the glue won't stick to the dust. So you want to get all the dust off. You need grab any normal or larger sized paintbrush that is softer and will pick up the dust and get it out of your way. Also good for catching eraser crumbs and getting them out of the way as well. A square is good for repairing paperback covers, along with the heavier poster paper. So then you can get the corners square because most poster paper that is hanging around in the library has probably been cut about 3 or 4 times and is likely not square anymore. Sanding paper, you can use the finer sandpaper. Thank you. Finer sandpaper is good for cleaning the edges of books. You can sand along the edge if you notice that there's a stain or pen marks, or if there's a stamp that you want to take off, you can try and sand it off. Heavier sandpaper is good for removing old glue. Like if you were going to try and repair this guy, all that old glue has to come off so that the new glue has something to stick to. And you can try using a sharp knife. I can be quite clumsy, so I wouldn't personally. But sandpaper usually takes it off fairly good. It might take a little bit of elbow grease, but you can get it off and then the new glue will have something to stick to and it will stick better to the paper than with the old glue. Glue. The funny thing about glue, when you order from Brodart, you can't order it in the winter because if it freezes, that'll wreck it. So this is one of the first things I was taught actually when I started doing repairs. If you're going to order glue, order it in the summer so that it's not shipped and freezing. There's a bunch of different tapes for book repair. There's cloth tape, which is excellent for repairing hardcovers. I like this stuff with the release backing because you can measure it and shape it and cut it properly before, like without having it all sticky, because you can get it without the release backing and then it just comes off like a normal roll of tape where it's just tape on top of tape. And I find that quite irritating because I like to size everything up and make sure that it's all going to fit first. There is book tape, which is quite thick. Let's take this out here. And Brodart, in all of their wisdom, is again selling book tape under 2 different names. There's a slightly lighter book tape and there's a heavier book tape. Of course, the heavier stuff is going to have more strength. It's going to last a little bit longer. And it will probably be better for most things. The lighter tape is good for, I guess, smaller items. Such as I could imagine using the lighter tape if you are taping along the front edge of a cover, as opposed to, I would definitely use the heavier tape along the spine, because the spine's going to get a good bit of wear and tear. But these are usually the two most damaged parts of the book, is the front of the cover and the spine. For example, this guy, which was a textbook from the 60s, or one of the required readings for English. I think everybody has read this for English class. And you can see the cover is quite damaged, so the thick, heavy tape would be really good along the edge. There is two-way hinge tape, which is good for reinforcing hinges. When your hinge has not completely broken down and the super is still intact, and ideally some of the paper is still intact, this tape is perfect for that. It's got, the backing comes off in two different pieces so that you can line it up one edge at a time, and it works really good. When I use the four-way hinge tape, which is this stuff, it's also known as stitched hinge tape, because it is stitched and it will basically rebuild the hinge, is what it does. Oh, I've got a cut piece here. So it's two pieces of tape with the sticky side out facing together. And so you remove the backing and it rebuilds the hinge when your hinge has completely broken down. The J-Lar tape, which we've got a little bit here, this stuff is really, really light. I personally wouldn't use it for repairs per se. I would use it more for taping over barcodes and labels, because it's incredibly thin and there's really not much to it. It's definitely not the strongest of tapes. And then we have the paper repair tape, which is known as Filmoplast P or Filmoplast P90. The P90 stuff is quite opaque, whereas the Filmoplast P, once it's burnished, can be very transparent actually. So I definitely recommend Filmoplast P, but here all they have is the P90. So we'll have to make do with that. Never use your standard invisible magic tape to repair a book, because it won't last. It's not sticky enough, and it will break down over time and will leave a sticky residue on the pages, and it's almost impossible to get off without damaging the book more. At MacEwan we had nursing textbooks where they had ripped out entire chapters, stapled them back together, and taped them back in. You can't repair that. There's no way. Plus they'd highlighted the entire thing. That was fabulous. Most tapes come on a 3-inch core, and so they have these wonderful little tape dispensers. I'm a huge nerd, so this is actually my personal tape dispenser. I love it. This was a treat when I bought this. And so you can fit multiple different rolls of tape on these guys. Just make sure I'm putting it on the proper way here. And the cord just slides in and clicks. And that's that. This is a really awesome tape dispenser, and what it's used for is taping the spines of books. What it does is there's a little line there, a little diagonal line, and it automatically measures where the bottom of your spine should line up so that it tapes it evenly along the spine and on both edges. And I can actually show you how that one works, because I'm going to be fixing this one right now. So you just line the spine up, line the bottom edge up with the, it's supposed to be on this side. Line the bottom edge up on this side, and if your tape is centered in the middle, then it will tape it pretty much perfectly. library copy, can you tell? We'll tape it pretty much perfectly, as long as everything else is lined up straight. Run the slicer on the top. And you just pull it down. Tighten it as much as you can. Fold it over. Burnish it with your bone. This is a bone. It's wonderful. It's good for burnishing, manipulating tapes. You can use it to grab the tape so that it's not all full of fingerprints and any residue that's been on your hands. Glue doesn't seem to stick to it very well. And that's pretty much the simplest spine repair that there is. You can do it without this. All you have to do is just take off your piece of tape. I usually leave it just a couple millimeters shorter on either edge and just line it up manually by hand and then press it down and burnish it. The only other kind of tape, this is filament tape. It's got glass filaments in it, often used for packing boxes to be shipped through the mail. And what it's really good for in book repair is reattaching the covers of damaged magazines and booklets. All you have to do is run a piece of filament tape along the outside of the center. So this guy's not destroyed, but we can pretend. If you take the staples out, if your covers come off, all you have to do is take the staples out, run a piece of filament tape down the outside edge of the spine. I like to, if the inside's looking really bad, then I will run a piece of filament tape up the inside too. Line it all up and staple it with a long arm stapler. So it does require a special stapler, but for it usually works and they hold up for quite a while afterwards. The only problem that I've found with that is once you take the staples out, you'll notice that the pages are at an angle because they've been cut so that they're flush when it's folded. And so lining it up again can be quite the task. So if I can, I like to use the binder clips and just clip it on one edge, and then I can tape it and re-staple it. And then it all still lines up again. It will be a little bit harder to close, it will be a little stiffer with the filament tape, but chances are it's not going to fall apart again. Okay, this guy's listed under optional supplies, along with the long reach stapler. An apron can be really good if you don't like getting glue and stuff all over your clothes, or if you're clumsy like me. And there are H-bands, which are essentially two elastics joined so that they fit over an item and distribute the pressure evenly. They work pretty good. I think this book might be too small. This book's way too small. They're handy. I don't like using them too much if it's a really heavy glue job, because I like a little bit more pressure. I'll use the weights if it's a book that's been repaired with glue. But if you've not got a weight handy, then it's better than nothing if they're the right size, because this one's way too big for this book. But if they're the right size, then they work better than nothing. An all-in binding thread is for resewing stitched signatures. That's a major repair and not one that I've ever undertaken, so I can't really advise too much because I'm not that much of an expert that I am good at that. Tape dispensers downstairs here at UNBC, they do it mostly by hand. They have one tape dispenser like this. The rest of the tape they spool out by hand, which works if your organization or you yourself cannot afford a tape dispenser. I find them really handy because then you don't need 3 hands to properly measure a piece of tape. So I like them. This one actually comes with a weight for another $50. I figured I'd skip on that, but it's also, if you're doing a lot of repairing, the weight is definitely a good investment because then you're not trying to hold the tape dispenser and pull out your piece of tape and measure it, and you almost need 3 hands for that too. There is a cleaner in the Brodart catalog called Sterling's Magic Cleaner. It is excellent at removing grime and gunk and marker off of laminated covers. It's also very good at removing grime and gunk, but not so much the marker, off of hardcovers, because the hardcover is usually more of a cloth or paper, whereas the laminated covers are plastic. And so the Magic Cleaner takes it off really good. You just wipe it on with one cloth, then wipe it off with another cloth, wax on, wax off. Works really good. Small containers are also very handy to hold glue, if you like to dole out your glue in large amounts, or water, which is what this one's full of, for gluing and repairing. And that's the supplies list. Okay. This is a really cute little book. It's called The Care and Feeding of Books Old and New. My supervisor lent it to me. And it's written by the former owners. When they wrote it, they owned a bookstore selling books about dogs. They sold new books, they sold old books, they sold rare books, they sold common books. They sold almost any book that you can imagine about dogs, so they ran across quite a few damaged books that they were buying used. And so they've got a really cute take on repair. The book is written with quite a bit of humor, and I find it was a really amusing read. The only thing that I really didn't like about it is they use the magic tape to repair their books. And that drives me a little bit crazy, because they make tape for book for repairing torn and damaged pages. So why would you use magic tape that is definitely not archival quality, is definitely not pH balanced, and will definitely not stand up to 20 years of use? But to each their own. There's no one right way to repair books. So, but it was a good book. Other than that. Okay, so now we've torn a page. Often happens when books are tossed around in backpacks or spend lots of time with dogs. And so all you really need to do is line it back up as best you can.
See the damage.
You want the damage? Okay. He's taking pictures for the BCLA browser. Thank you. This is my lovely husband, Jordan. He's my assistant today.
Lovely assistant.
Lovely assistant. Okay, so you just tear off a piece of tape, about usually just a little bit longer than the rip itself. There we go. Toss it over top of the rip. Yeah, see, this stuff isn't very transparent at all. And burnish well. Yeah, because see, look at how untransparent that is. It's very opaque. I don't like the Filmoplast P, and it's not getting any more transparent with burnishing. That's unfortunate. Okay, and then you don't ever want to fold the tape over the top, because it will create a catch that other items will catch along it. Jackets, fuzzy sweaters, anything like that will catch. Thank you. So you just cut it off flush with the top. You can do it with scissors, you can do it with A sharp knife in your cutting mat. Cut it off as close as you can. And there we go, we've repaired a page. If you feel that the damage is particularly bad, that's right. This one repaired pretty much perfectly. You can't even see it on this side. You can't even tell that there was ever a rip. But on this side, the tape is not very transparent at all. And I've now completely removed this part of the point.
Oopsies.
Yeah, that's okay. Again, it's just the catalog, so it's okay. It's an old book. It's my own book, so it's okay, I don't mind. So yeah, if there's a hole where you can feel the tackiness of the tape through, just cut another little piece and pop it over top, burnish it. You want to, generally speaking, you want to place the tape on the side where it will be the least intrusive. If there's a picture on one side and text on the other, I would put it over the text because it will still be easier to see the text, whereas you might lose some of the detail in the picture. If it's a map that you're trying to repair, if there's nothing on the verso, the underside of the map, then tape that side. If there is something, try and, if there's one side where, say, the tear is out in the middle of nowhere and then on the other side is right next to the town, you want to repair on the side where it's going to be the least intrusive, so it will be on the side where it's out in the middle of a cornfield or something. Loose pages, I'll do this one. This one's going to be a little bit more interesting because the hinges on this one are toast as well. So this is going to glue right through. This is a good example of when a simple repair can be very difficult. With this one, with this book, we've got a loose page. Okay, looking at it, first off, okay, you take the loose page, you glue it back in, and that's it. But when you look a little closer, the hinge on this one is, the paper is completely gone, it's down to the super. So this signature is loose. And gluing this, if you use too much glue, any amount of glue is pretty much guaranteed it's going to come through this hole behind the signature, and it will leak through and glue these pages shut. If you use way too much glue, it is going to leak down through the back of the super and glue the spine to the back of the signatures. So in that case, what you need to do is fold a piece of wax paper and thread the wax paper all the way down the spine so that it will stop the glue. If the glue does get in there, it will stop it from contacting both the back of the signatures and the back of the spine at the same time. Elsewise, for this one, it would be, if the signature wasn't this bad, or if the super wasn't showing, and it was just the signature, you could just put wax paper along this side, flip it over, put wax paper on either side of the page you've got it edge in, and then just glue it. But because that one is so bad, that's going to be 2 or 3 repairs just to get that page in. So we'll go back to the page that I just accidentally ripped out, and we'll cheat. This one, the spine is still in moderately decent shape. It's not loose or falling apart or anything, just the edges are a little frayed. So the glue's got not very many places to go. So what we're going to do is a piece of wax paper. If you're not going to be using a lot of glue, you can just put a dot of it on wax paper, and then that will avoid the need for bringing bringing out an entire little container of it. You want some good small brushes for gluing because it can be fairly intricate work. Okay. There's quite a few different ways to glue back in. You can use a brush. You can use a thin stick, such as a kebab stick like this one, or a knitting needle, or a toothpick, and that will greatly control the amount of glue that you're putting on, because you don't want to put too much, or else it's going to squish out along the sides. This will be interesting. There we go. Lots.
What kind of glue is that?
This is, good question. This is Bind-Guard adhesive. It is, I do believe it is pH neutral. It is flexible, so it won't get hard and unmalleable like normal white glue would. So it is designed specifically for the repair of book bindings, loose or torn pages, and for the binding of periodicals, which I've never used it for. You can order it from Brodart. Again, order in the summer, because it will freeze. Okay, so you want a piece of wax paper for either side of the pages that you were tipping in. If there was a hole down the center, which there's a few but not many, not enough for the glue to get through, you'd want to put a piece of wax paper down the middle as well to keep the glue from seeping through. And then it's just, you toss in a little bit of glue. You want to just glue right along the edge where you want the pages to meet. You don't want too much glue. This stuff's pretty thin, so it spreads really well. Just enough to keep the pages in, and not glue the entire book shut, which I have seen happen. Oh, and see this one, the top of the page is coming up a bit, so we're going to stick a piece of, there we go. Now any glue that does seep through won't go very far. Awesome. With this being a hinge, because these are the last pages in the book, you could also technically use hinge tape. They won't get as close in as they would with glue. Sometimes if you find that the edge is really ratty, you will want to trim it so that it will fit in better. That will also remove any of the older glue. Because most pages, when you try and glue them back in, they will stick out just a little bit from the rest of the text block. And which, again, gives the opportunity for them to catch, and they are more likely to sustain more damage if they are sticking out. So there we go. You line it up as best you can, toss the wax paper in there as well as you can, and you'll want to weight it overnight. That's tipping in a page. Or 2 pages in this case. And you'll always want to rinse your brushes right away, because once the glue dries, your brushes are toast. So I always keep water handy.
Just a quick question.
Of course.
Is there ever a circumstance where tape would actually be better for that sort of thing? Or like if it's a really heavy use item?
For just tipping in a page, I like to stick with glue. If it is closer to the edges of the book, I will use the hinge tape as well once it has been glued. With a repair like this, with these ones, because the hinges are toast, like it's completely toast on this side as well as the other. I would probably, this one I might get away with just doing the two-way tape, but this back one is probably going to need the super, the super is gonna need to be cut, more than likely, so I would use the four-way tape along to rebuild the hinge itself, and then I would more than likely use the two-way tape to do probably a page or two on either side, and just provide the extra reinforcement. In this case, even though I'm going to be gluing this other page back in, because this signature itself is so loose, I would glue it as best as I can, and then if I still felt that it was really loose, I would also probably put the tape on it. This item itself, I know, has been repaired at least once before, and we have a second copy of this item that has been repaired at least twice. So this is a very heavy use item, and knowing that, I would more than likely put some more tape than I would with a paperback out of my own collection, because it is going to get the use. Nursing textbooks as well. They would be a good candidate for the extra taping, because their text blocks, which is the big chunk of paper in the middle, tend to be so heavy, and their spines sometimes cannot hold up to the repeated use because they are very heavy circulating items, that they will pull the hinge apart, and they pull it away from the board, kind of like that, and it completely destroys them. So when repairing nursing textbooks, I always use quite a bit of tape, because they just aren't built to stand up to the abuse that they have to withstand, especially with nursing students, who are all very lovely people. Here's another good example of an advanced repair. We've talked about it already, but with this one, because there are so many cracks and so many loose pages, this one's going to be a very difficult repair. It will need to be between each of these cracks. After the glue is all sanded down, there will need to be wax paper in between each loose section, and each loose page within the section, and it will have to be then try and glue it back together and fit everything in there so that it all lines up. It's going to be very difficult, so I definitely won't be doing this with you guys tonight. And there is a chance that this will need upwards of probably 20 or 30 pieces of wax paper to keep the glue from seeping between all of these cracks and loose pages. So this is a quite advanced repair. This becomes a spine repair, not just a loose page. And this is actually quite common along a lot of the older mass market bound books, because the glue just has not held up with quite a few of them. Hinge reinforcement and replacement, which we were just talking about. So with this one, because the hinges, there's still some paper attached. The hinge is not completely destroyed. The super is still in moderately decent shape. So this one can probably get away with just using the two-way hinge tape. So what you want to do is measure it out. Again, I like to leave it a couple of millimeters short of the actual height of the book, because it will end up hanging over, and it's notoriously hard to cut out of deep into the gutter of a hinge. And then you want to fold it with the outside surface in, so that the sticky side is now facing out. And then the easiest way to get it deep into the gutter is to wrap it around a ruler so that you have something that will apply a nice even pressure. And then take off one side of the tape. And you want to line it up as best you can. As close in as you can get it. And as straight as you can get it. And then apply a nice even pressure. And burnish it. And then take the other piece of sticky off, or the backing, and line it up as best you can. And then fold it over. You want to try and keep the hinge nice and tight, because a loose hinge, it's just going to get damaged again, and you can only tape it so many times really. So, and that's a good reinforcement. Again with this one, because it is a high use item and it's not in the best of shape. You can see this signature has come away a bit as well, it's quite loose. So I'll be applying another piece of hinge tape here to provide some extra reinforcement. And then on this side, when you've got more than one repair that a book is going to need, for example, new hinges and gluing, such as is required with this one, you want to make sure that you get the basic structure of the item fixed first, because there's no point gluing something when you can't fix the hinges on it. And if you try and glue it when the hinges are still really loose, there's a chance that it won't line up, or that you will damage your first repair trying to complete the second one. So it's good to kind of work your way down the priority list with the repairs. Sometimes they will have to sit even overnight or over the weekend for the glue to dry before you can start your next repair. And with this one, because the super is showing, it's not too ratty, but it is starting to pull the back of the spine away from, or the front part of the spine away from the signatures.
See that?
Sure. And so what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to cut the super and rebuild the hinge using the 4-way tape. The tricky thing about cutting supers is when you've got to try and get all of the fabric out so that the tape has something good and stable to adhere to. And so that's when you need a really good pair of scissors. For the initial cut, I like to use a good sharp X-Acto knife, because it will be able to get really close and cut it without leaving it too ragged.
Let's not forget a picture you got.
Oh, yeah, of course. So I just cut the super as close as I can. There we go. So the spine has now completely come apart. Try and clear off any of the raggedness that you can off of the where you're going to have to tape to rebuild the spine, or the hinge, sorry. Clear it off as best you can, because the tape is really only as good as the surface that it's adhered to, which can get quite tricky and interesting in books that have a lot of use and are in really rough shape, such as these. Get all the dust out. Okay, so it's been completely unattached, disattached, and so the next step is going to be to try and trim this without pulling it away from the back of the signatures even more. And you don't wanna cut the headband or the tailband. This is the tailband, the little piece of fabric that is, it protects the bottom of the signatures against any damage that the spine might sustain. So you wanna just try and get all of the fabric out. And again, cutting as close as you can without damaging the rest of the book. So that you get a nice clean edge. Okay. Okay, so we've got a decently clean edge here that we can adhere the tape to. Get some of this junk out of there. There we go. And then if you'll stand up nice like that. Same as the rest of my taping, I like to cut it just a little bit, probably about 1/2 centimeter short of the edges, so that it's not catching. I like stitched hinge tape. It's one of my favorite tapes, actually. You know you're a nerd when you have a preference for tapes.
That's a 4-way stuff.
Yeah, this is the
Open it up.
Yep. This is awesome. You're better with that camera than
No, it's in all.
I am. That's okay. That's all I
You
use
betcha.
it for tomorrow.
I don't even know what's in them.
Okay, and then you just peel off one side of the backing at a time. Oh, here we go. The hardest part when using the 4-way hinge tape is getting it adhered down the spine, because your second, the one side of the tape, the one side of the stitching is going to go here to recreate the one side of the hinge, and then the other side goes along the inside of the spine to typically the back board. In this case, we've got still the end paper and another sheet, but usually it's along the back of the board, and so the hardest part is getting it to, like being able to burnish it down the spine, because when you fix it, the spine ends up closed again. And so that's where your long thin sticks come in very handy. Kebab stick, knitting needle, both McEwen and here at UNBC have managed to find this funny little thin metal stick that works really good. It's not as sturdy as your average knitting needle though, so you've got to really work really hard and try and find a way to bend it at one end to try and put pressure all the way down. And this one's going to be extra fun because the signature is loose too. And you just line it up right where the old hinge used to be. So right at the corner. Again, trying to keep it straight. And nice and tight. And burnish well. I like to do the back of the signatures first, because I find that can be it's tougher to get it on this side than it is to get it on the back of the spine itself when the second half is completed. Okay, Remove the backing from the other side. With the release backing for the cloth tape, they've got the little like tab over the end so you can get it. This stuff, they make you fight for it. Can't give it to you too easy. See? Goodness. The next tricky part becomes getting everything lined up without sticking the two sides together. Because that's always fun. You can't fix that. There we go. Okay. And back. I'm going to try to line it up. Again, trying to line up with the location of the original hinge. Keep it straight the whole way. It's easier to repair hinges on larger books than it is on a small book like this, actually. Because you've got a little bit more room to work with. Whereas with this one, it's got such a small spine that it's hard to line up. There we go. There's a funny little stick. I have no idea where they get these. I really don't, but they're handy. I think they might actually come with some of the tattle taping systems.
When I had them, I used it to put tab tape down right where you're
Yeah.
at, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's where they get them from. They being all of the lovely repair gurus that I've had the pleasure to learn from and work with in the past.
Almost looks like a dipstick from a car.
It totally does. My dad's a mechanic, so that's what I thought the first time too. I was like, wow, that's awesome. Okay. This one might even be a little bit sturdier. I'm gonna burnish it as best as you can. Working in such a small spot is difficult, but there we go. That's all right. Burnish it on this side as well. Again, with this one, because it is in such poor shape and it is high volume, there will be more tape applied to this over the coming week. But that's rebuilding a hinge. And you can do the same for paperbacks. With paperbacks, though, you wouldn't use the 4-way tape, you just use the 2-way tape, because there is no stitched hinge that you have to replace. There's no super, so you would just get it in as deep as you can with the ruler and burnish it really well, and you can use it to put your covers back on. I like to use it after gluing, just because it is such a high stress area right along the cover. So this is what I find often in paperbacks too, is the very back page will be glued out farther than the next page in.
Why do
So-
they do that?
I have no idea. It's like they think that it's gonna help, but then because it's
They didn't use wax paper. Yeah.
clearly, they must not have, because yeah, and see, even this one you can see it's glued out a little bit on this one, so they must not have they must have had a failure in the gluing there. And So you find there's a lot of damage usually on the second page in. Which is frustrating because then you're dealing with two pieces of paper, not, you know, a more sturdy cover and a piece of paper. And for hard covers, again, it's the cloth book tape. Very, very sturdy, very heavy duty. It can handle a lot. Comes in all sorts of different colors. So you can purchase a few different ones and find the color that best suits whatever you're repairing at the moment. Comes in different widths as well. This is 2" because it's a fairly good standard size. And the wings that I made up, the wing template that I made up for you guys, is built for 2" tape. So this fits perfectly, and it creates a little wing like that. The wings are used to reinforce the edges of the, I guess I should put the lid on my knife, eh? Reinforce the edges of the tops and the bottoms of the spines. And it's good for reinforcing this front corner of the hinge as well. Because most books, when they're sitting on the shelf, they get pulled out by the top of the spine, which also causes the bottom of the spine to drag along the shelf. So those are very high damage areas in a lot of books, especially in a library setting. And this template is meant to be photocopied or traced or glued or whatever onto a heavier piece of poster board, and then you can just cut out the wings and use it as a template using the negative space, and you can cut wings that are the same size all day long. Works really good if it's laminated.
Make me so happy.
And it's a lot cheaper than the wings that you can buy from Brodart. It can be easily adjusted to fit different widths of tape. You can make this part wider. These I just drew up last night. So it's 2" from the top to the bottom corner, and so it fits a 2" piece of tape. And then just the length is just the length for to go across the top of the spine, to go across up here. And then I just came out another 2" to create the wings. And so with that in mind, you can easily create wings for any size of tape that you need and any length of spine that you need. Because the only difference between these is the length of the middle. The wing sizes themselves did not change, and they are still 2". And so with wings, they're good for trying to prevent the hinge damage like that, because it will provide a little bit more stability up at this top hinge. They're mostly for protecting the edges of the spine. So all you need to do, this is again where the cloth tape with the release backing comes in really handy, because you can make a bunch of them and just put them in a drawer, instead of having to try and cut these from tape without the backing, which I've never tried. Thank goodness we've always had release backing where I've worked, because that would be a headache and a half. And then you just line it up with the wings facing to the tops of the boards. Line it up along the top. To reinforce. And you want to burnish it into the outer hinges as well, so that it's not, because if you just wrap it over, then it's going to create a pulling force between the spine and the board, which will do more harm than good. So you want to really burnish it into the hinges. When you're doing any hinge repair requiring glue, or sometimes even with the tape, when you feel that weighting it would be good, using the kebab sticks or knitting needle and placing that in the gutter of the spine there in the hinge. And then weighting it on top will put pressure and will really force the glue or the tape to adhere quite well. I've actually seen boards where they've taken a piece of brass along the edge and just given it a little tiny lip so that it fits right in the side of the hinge, and you can buy them. Me being the person that I am, I would make them by just getting a piece of brass or steel and attaching it to the edge of a piece of board branching. And just open it up and then just fold the wings in as tight as you can. And burnish. And same on the other side. And that is reinforce the top edge of your spine. So it will be less likely to completely fall apart when it is pulled off the shelf and it is already in a fragile state. Basic cover, a common cover damage for hard covers is along the bottom edge where they've been slid along the shelf, and corners where they've been dropped and the corners get all smooshed in. Corners are actually really, really easy to create yourself to help protect against further damage or to repair damage that has already occurred. All you have to do is cut out, not your finger, a square of cloth tape. Square enough. Pinch it down the middle and just cut out a little triangle. And you now have a corner that you can use to repair and protect corners that have already been damaged. A lot of the times, if it's been bad enough and it's a cloth covering, it will have completely worn away and you will be able to see the cardboard. And the corners are a very weak spot when it comes to that, because you get things that catch and they can now pull up along the front edge of the book as well. So you just line up the notch in your corner with the corner of the book. Always with the burnishing. And pull them on. Okay. That's good. And pull it up as tight as you can. Pull it across. Oh, see, this one I cut a little bit crooked. If you've got extras hanging off like that, you want to cut it just like any other time you've got tape hanging out. Again, for the reason that it will catch. There we go. And that's how you repair a corner. Again, it's a lot cheaper than buying the pre-made corners from Brodart, and something that if you're running low and you're in circulation, it's 8 o'clock at night and there's not a lot happening, you can just cut some corners. It makes you look busy. I've never worked, sir. No. And with any of the repair or damage along the edges, you can just cut a piece of tape and fold it over. And that will reinforce along the bottom and try and prevent some further damage. With soft covers, this poor guy isn't quite glued yet, I'm sure. Get everything out of the way. This is where a square comes in very handy, because you can rebuild corners just using the poster board, and they work quite well. You know, when possible, try to pick something that's close to your cover, because it's really obvious if they're not anywhere close at all. And in the circulating collection, it's nice if they look nice. This being old and probably fifth hand, I'm not too worried about it as it's coming out of my own collection. And so all you need to do is measure how big of a piece you need. You want you want to make sure that you've got a little bit of overlap. So for this one, if I do probably 2 by 2 inches square, that gives me a good bit of overlap. And so you want to make sure that the piece of poster board is actually square, because it's really hard to fit if they're not, and I've tried and it's not a lot of fun. Luckily for me, my cutting mat has the lines, the measurement lines on it, so I can tell already that this is fairly square. So we'll just measure out the piece that we need. Use the square to line everything up here and make sure that it's all nice and square. Getting it square is really the hardest part of this repair. There we go. So we've got the little piece that we're going to use to repair the corner. Probably should have taken all the tape off this edge first. Okay. We've got a nice clean square. And so you just want to line it up with your edge so that it replicates the missing part of the cover. And you can use glue to attach it, but you will still need to use tape as well, because you've got all of these frayed bits and the glue isn't going to be able to keep those down so that they don't catch on anything else. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a piece of wax paper behind it so that the tape doesn't get everywhere and start sticking on the rest of the book as well. Up. And with the lighter tape, this is not a repair that needs the drastically heavy tape. Actually, this tape is all dirty from it. This is one instance where you are going to more than likely need to wrap the tape around the edge. It's not ideal, but due to the nature of the repair, if you don't wrap the tape around the edge, there's still going to be this gap, and all that will be holding it on is just the tape on the front, which leaves it quite unstable. So you just want to push it over as tight as you can, so that there is not a lot of tape hanging off the edge for it to catch. I'm going to trim the tape off of this side because my tape placement is not quite perfect. And flip it open and repeat. Tape on the other side. This one is going to need 2 pieces of tape because it is quite thick, so I'm going to do this edge first. On this side, because I've already pulled the tape over the edge on the bottom, I'm just going to trim the rest of the tape off. And then the next piece of tape, I will wrap it and bring it back up to the front. And that's how you repair a corner. Any other cover damage, if it's not missing big holes such as that, can usually just be repaired by taping along the edges and folding it over. And that usually will fix most problems. And the spine, which we've already taped today, that reinforces the spine and helps hold the covers and to try and protect against the damage along the outer edge of the spine.